Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Najwa Husseini with Azadi News. UNHCR calls for solidarity, support and solutions for Rohingya refugees ahead of an urgent donor conference. Burma's Rohingya crisis exposes ASEAN weaknesses, says new report. On the eve of this week's donor conference for Rohingya refugees UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency is stressing the need for stronger international support and a redoubling of efforts to find solutions for this stateless and displaced population. Together with the United States, United Kingdom, and European Union, UNHCR is co-hosting a virtual donor conference today to meet urgent humanitarian needs of forcibly displaced Rohingya both inside and outside Burma. Support for critical services in host communities is also a priority. The ongoing humanitarian response is facing a dramatic shortfall this year as less than half of the requested funds have been received so far. In 2020, the United Nations has appealed for more than $1 billion to meet the humanitarian needs of Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. The spread of the COVID-19 pandemic has added layers of new challenges and needs to an already complex and massive refugee emergency. Currently, 1 million Rohingya refugees are living in settlements across Bangladesh's Cox's Bazar district. Most of them, some 740,000, fled from Burma during the most recent displacement crisis in 2017. Other countries in the region host some 150,000 Rohingya refugees. An estimated 600,000 live in Burma's Arakan state. Across the entire region, most Rohingya live on the margins of society and they need to be assured access to basic health care, clean drinking water, a reliable food supply, or meaningful work and educational opportunities. The COVID-19 pandemic has worsened their living conditions, made access to services even more challenging, increased the risk of sexual and gender-based violence, and exacerbated the impacts of infectious diseases for displaced Rohingya living in crowded camps, such as those in Cox's Bazar and in Arakan state. UNHCR stresses that the international community and countries in the region must not only maintain support for refugees and their hosts, but also adapt to critical new needs and expand the search for solutions. The focus of the search for solutions to this crisis must be on the voluntary, safe, dignified, and sustainable return of Rohingya refugees and other displaced people to their homes or to a place of their choosing in Burma. The responsibility for creating conditions conducive to the safe and sustainable return of Rohingya rests with the Burmese authorities. This process will need to engage the whole of society, open and enhance the dialogue between the Burmese authorities and Rohingya refugees, and take measures that help build confidence and trust. These include lifting restrictions on freedom of movement, enabling displaced Rohingya to return to their own villages, and providing a clear pathway to citizenship. Funds raised at the conference will go to international organizations and non-governmental organizations working to alleviate the crisis on the ground in Burma throughout the region and towards the UN-led Joint Response Plan (JRP) in Bangladesh. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) has failed to respond effectively to the Rohingya crisis in Burma thanks to a lack of leadership and the 10-member organization's inability to grasp the scale of the human rights abuses, a report from a group of regional lawmakers said on Tuesday. ASEAN parliamentarians for human rights said ASEAN had been hampered by its own institutional structure, which allowed member state Myanmar the space to set the parameters of ASEAN's engagement. It noted a lack of leadership within the ASEAN Secretariat in Jakarta and among member states themselves. Caught between respect for its key principles of consensus and non-interference on the one hand, and an international and domestic outcry on the other, the regional bloc has struggled to respond to the crisis and articulate a clear vision and strategy that would help end the cycle of violence and displacement, the group said in the report, which examined the reasons for ASEAN's weak response to the crisis. Nearly 1 million Rohingya fled Burma for neighboring Bangladesh in the face of a brutal military crackdown that is now the subject of a genocide investigation at the United Nations top court. While those who fled now live in sprawling refugee camps, those left behind in Rakhine are in camps for displaced people that rights groups have described as open prisons. In the report noted that while ASEAN's approach had enabled it to maintain a dialogue with the Burmese authorities, it had failed to acknowledge the gravity and scale of the human rights crisis in the Western state and the Burmese authorities' role in creating it. The situation there has deteriorated since the Rohingya exodus, with more people forced from their homes as a result of the escalating conflict between the Burmese military and the Arkan Army, an ethnic Rakhine armed group. The government has now said that the November election will not take place in many parts of the state because it is no longer safe. International media are not allowed to visit the area. This is today's news. To get more updates about Rohingya, subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the notification bell. Visit our website azadinews.org and follow our social media accounts. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.